In the vastness of space, where stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across an endless black canvas, there existed a coalition of alien species known as the Accord. For thousands of years, they had governed the galaxy with wisdom and unity, ensuring peace among its countless civilizations. But this peace was not born out of trust or love. It was built on fear. Fear of one species in particular: humans. The warning was clear and unyielding: never assault humans. This rule was etched into every law book, taught in every school, and whispered around every council table. It wasn't just advice. It was a commandment passed down through generations. Ancient records spoke of civilizations that had dared to invade Earth, only to vanish without a trace. Some said humanity had unleashed weapons so powerful they could tear apart planets. Others believed humans carried a curse, an invisible force that turned allies into enemies and enemies into dust. Whatever the truth, no one questioned the warning. Until now, Commander Zenara stood at the helm of her flagship, staring out at the swirling nebula ahead. Her sleek silver armor reflected the faint glow of distant suns, but her sharp green eyes betrayed unease. She had been summoned to intercept a distress signal from the edge of known space. The message came from the Vorthic Dominion, a rogue faction notorious for their disregard of galactic laws. They were ruthless, unpredictable, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. And according to the transmission, they had found something or someone they shouldn't have. Zenara tightened her grip on the railing as her second-in-command, Lieutenant Keller, approached. His elongated head bobbed slightly as he moved, his large black eyes scanning the datapad in his hands. "Commander," he began, his voice low and gravelly, "the signal confirms our worst fears. The Vorthics have located a human colony." "A human colony?" Zenara repeated, turning to face him. Her tail flicked behind her, a sign of agitation. Humans hadn't been seen in centuries. Not since they disappeared from the galactic stage during what historians called the Great Exodus. Rumors suggested they had fled to the farthest reaches of the universe, seeking refuge from the chaos they themselves had created. Now, it seemed those rumors were true. Keller nodded grimly. "Their scans indicate the colony is on a remote planet designated Solace Prime. The Vorthics plan to raid it for resources. They claim the humans are primitive, easy targets." Zenara's lips curled into a snarl. Primitive? If only the Vorthics knew how wrong they were. Every species in the galaxy had heard the stories. Tales of unimaginable power, of battles fought with weapons that defied logic, of entire fleets reduced to ash in mere moments. And yet, here the Vorthics were, marching blindly toward disaster. "We must stop them," Zenara said firmly. "Send a message to the Accord. Inform them of the situation and request reinforcements. We cannot let the Vorthics make this mistake." Keller hesitated. "And if they refuse?" "You know how some factions feel about interfering with rogue groups. They see it as unnecessary risk." "Then we act alone," Zenara replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I will not stand by while fools doom us all." As preparations began aboard the flagship, Zenara retreated to her quarters. There, she activated a holographic display showing images of Earth, the cradle of humanity. Once a blue-green jewel teeming with life, it was now a scarred husk, its oceans dried up and its skies choked with ash. The destruction had been self-inflicted, a result of humanity's insatiable hunger for progress. Yet even in ruin, Earth remained a symbol of both brilliance and terror. Humans had achieved feats no other species could dream of, but they had also unleashed horrors beyond comprehension. Zenara sighed, rubbing her temples. She couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything. Perhaps it already had. As her ship hurtled through hyperspace towards Solace Prime, she sent one final message to the Accord. Her words were simple yet urgent. Do not underestimate what you do not understand. When they arrived at Solace Prime, the sight took Zenara's breath away. The planet was breathtakingly beautiful, its surface covered in lush forests and shimmering lakes. Unlike Earth, which bore the scars of humanity's hubris, Solace Prime appeared untouched by time. It was easy to see why the humans had chosen it as their new home. But beauty often masked danger, and Zenara knew better than to let her guard down. Scanning the horizon, she spotted the first signs of the human settlement, a cluster of domes nestled between rolling hills. They looked modest, almost primitive, compared to the towering cities of other advanced species. Smoke rose lazily from chimneys, and fields stretched out in neat rows. From a distance, it seemed peaceful. Too peaceful. Before Zenara could formulate a plan, the sky darkened as the Vorthic fleet descended upon the planet. Their ships were massive, bristling with cannons and glowing with energy shields. They made no attempt to hide their presence, broadcasting threats over open channels. Surrender your resources, or we will take them by force. Their leader bellowed, his voice dripping with arrogance. Zenara watched in silence, her heart pounding. She wanted to intervene, to warn the humans of the impending attack. But protocol forbade such actions unless absolutely necessary. Instead, she ordered her crew to monitor the situation closely, ready to act if things escalated. The humans, however, showed no signs of panic. In fact, they didn't react at all. At first, Zenara thought they hadn't noticed the invasion. But then, something extraordinary happened. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The ground beneath the Vorthic ships began to tremble, and strange lights pulsed across the landscape. Suddenly, beams of energy shot upward, striking the lead Vorthic vessel. Its shields flickered and collapsed within seconds, leaving it vulnerable to further attacks. More beams followed, targeting additional ships with terrifying accuracy. Within minutes, half the fleet was disabled, drifting helplessly in orbit. Zenara stared in disbelief. How could such seemingly primitive beings possess technology capable of neutralizing an entire armada? It didn't make sense, unless the warnings were true. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden explosion. One of the remaining Vorthic ships retaliated, firing a barrage of missiles at the human settlement. But instead of hitting their mark, the missiles veered off course, colliding harmlessly with nearby mountains. It was as though the humans had hacked into the very fabric of reality, bending it to their will. The battle raged on, but the outcome was never in doubt. By the time the last Vorthic ship exploded in a fiery inferno, Zenara realized the full extent of humanity's power. These weren't just survivors clinging to existence. They were warriors, strategists, and masters of innovation. And they had defended their home with brutal efficiency. As the smoke cleared and silence returned to Solace Prime, Zenara felt a chill run down her spine. The Vorthics had ignored the warning, and now they were gone. But what did this mean for the rest of the galaxy? Would others follow their example, driven by greed and ignorance? Or would they learn from this tragedy before it was too late? For now, Zenara could only watch and wait. The humans had proven their strength, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Somewhere deep inside, she feared the day when humanity's wrath would extend beyond Solace Prime and engulf the entire galaxy in flames. The aftermath of the battle left Solace Prime eerily quiet. The once pristine skies were now streaked with trails of smoke and debris from the shattered Vorthic fleet. Commander Zenara stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring down at the planet below. Her crew worked silently around her, their movements tense and deliberate. No one spoke about what they had just witnessed, but the weight of it hung heavy in the air. Zenara replayed the events in her mind, trying to make sense of what she had seen. The humans' descendants of Earth's exiles had appeared so peaceful, almost primitive, living in harmony with their environment. Yet when the Vortex attacked, they transformed into something entirely different. Their weapons were unlike anything Zanara had ever encountered. Energy beams that could disable entire fleets, drones that adapted mid-combat, and some form of gravity manipulation that crushed enemy ships like tin cans. But more unsettling than their technology was their demeanor during the fight. They hadn't panicked or hesitated. Instead, they responded with cold precision, as if this kind of warfare was second nature to them. "Commander," Lieutenant Keller said, breaking the silence. His voice was soft but urgent. "We've analyzed the data from the engagement. It appears the humans used a combination of advanced weaponry and psychological tactics. Some of the surviving Vortex soldiers, well, they're not themselves anymore." Zanara turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Keller hesitated before continuing. "Their minds seem fractured. We've intercepted transmissions from their ships. Many are experiencing hallucinations, visions of things that aren't there. Others are reporting uncontrollable trembling, confusion, even self-harm. Whatever the humans did, it didn't stop at physical destruction." A chill ran down Zanara's spine. She had heard rumors of humanity's experiments with mental warfare, but she'd always dismissed them as exaggerations. Now, faced with evidence, she couldn't deny the truth. These humans weren't just defending themselves. They were dismantling their enemies from within. Before she could respond, another transmission crackled through the ship's comm system. This time, it came directly from the human settlement. A single voice emerged, calm and measured, speaking in flawless galactic standard, the universal language used across species. "To those who watch from above," the voice began, "we warned your kind long ago. Leave us in peace, and we will leave you unharmed. Ignore our warnings, and you will face consequences beyond comprehension." The message ended abruptly, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Zanara clenched her fists, her tail flicking nervously behind her. The humans knew she was here. They must have detected her ship during the battle. And yet they hadn't attacked. Why? Were they giving her a chance to retreat, or was this some new form of psychological manipulation? "Prepare a shuttle," Zanara ordered finally. "I'm going down to the surface." Keller's eyes widened in alarm. "Commander, that's too dangerous. We don't know what they're capable of, or what they might do to you." "I have to try," Zanara replied firmly. "If we don't understand them better, this won't end here. The galaxy needs answers, and I intend to find them." Reluctantly, Keller nodded and signaled for the shuttle bay to be readied. As Zanara boarded the small craft moments later, she felt a mix of fear and determination. She didn't know what awaited her on Solace Prime, but she knew one thing for certain: humanity held secrets far greater than anyone realized. The descent to the planet's surface was smooth, the shuttle gliding effortlessly through the atmosphere. From above, Solace Prime looked serene, its forests stretching endlessly toward distant mountains. But as Zanara approached the human settlement, she noticed subtle signs of activity. Figures moved among the domes, tending to crops or repairing equipment. There was no sign of panic or celebration after the battle, just quiet efficiency. When the shuttle touched down, Zanara stepped out cautiously, her hand resting on the hilt of her plasma blade. She wore no armor, hoping to appear less threatening. Around her, the air smelled fresh, tinged with the scent of soil and vegetation. It was strange how peaceful this place felt. Despite the horrors that had unfolded mere hours earlier, a group of humans emerged from one of the domes, walking slowly but confidently toward her. They wore simple clothing made from natural fibers, their faces calm and unreadable. At the center of the group was a woman who seemed older than the rest, her silver hair tied back neatly. She carried herself with authority, her piercing blue eyes locking onto Zanara immediately. "You're brave to come alone," the woman said, her voice steady and clear. Unlike the recorded message earlier, this greeting was personal and slightly menacing. "I came to understand," Zinara replied, keeping her tone neutral. "Your people defeated the Vorthix with ease. You could have destroyed my ship too, but you didn't. Why?" The woman studied her for a moment before responding. "Because you're not like them. Not yet, anyway." She gestured for Zinara to follow her, leading the way into the dome. Inside, the space was surprisingly spacious, filled with glowing panels and intricate machinery. It was a stark contrast to the simplicity of the settlement outside. "My name is Dr. Alira," the woman introduced herself as they walked. "I was part of the original expedition that fled Earth centuries ago. We came here seeking refuge, hoping to rebuild without interference. But the universe has a way of finding us, doesn't it?" Zinara nodded, absorbing every word. "Why didn't you reveal yourself sooner? Why stay hidden?" Alira stopped and turned to face her. "Because revealing ourselves would invite conflict. Humans have learned the hard way that trust is a luxury we can't afford. Every time we've tried to coexist with other species, it ends in betrayal or worse. So we chose isolation. Until now." Her words struck a chord with Zinara. She thought of the Accord's laws, designed to keep the galaxy safe from humanity's wrath. Perhaps those laws weren't meant to protect others from humans, but to protect humans from others. What happened today? Zinara began, choosing her words carefully. "It wasn't just offense. You broke the Vorthix minds." "How?" Alira's expression darkened. "Survival isn't pretty. When we left Earth, we took more than just our bodies. We brought knowledge, technologies, and strategies developed during our darkest days. One of those technologies targets the psyche, exploiting weaknesses in the brain's chemistry. It's not something we use lightly, but when provoked, we have no choice." Zinara swallowed hard. "And the Vorthix? What will happen to them?" "They'll live if they're lucky," Alira replied coldly. "But they'll never be the same. Their minds are broken, their spirits crushed. That's the price of underestimating us." The conversation shifted as Alira led Zinara deeper into the dome. They entered a chamber filled with holographic displays, each showing images of Earth's past. Ruined cities, scorched landscapes, and armies clashing in endless wars. Zinara felt a pang of sadness as she gazed at the devastation. Humanity had once been so full of promise, only to destroy itself through ambition and greed. "This is why we left," Alira explained. "Earth taught us that power corrupts, and unchecked progress leads to ruin. Here, on Solace Prime, we've tried to build something different. Something sustainable. But the galaxy won't let us forget where we came from." Zinara stared at the holograms, her mind racing. She understood now why humanity was feared, not because they were inherently evil, but because they carried the scars of their history. And those scars made them unpredictable, dangerous even to themselves. As the tour continued, Zinara noticed something odd about the humans around her. Despite their outward calm, there was an underlying tension, a sense that they were constantly on edge. She realized then that these people weren't just survivors. They were warriors, trained to adapt and overcome at any cost. Finally, Alira brought her to a large viewing window overlooking the settlement. Below, children played while adults worked together seamlessly. It was a picture of unity and resilience. But Zinara couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the surface, something darker lurked. "Tell me," Zinara asked quietly, "what happens next? Will you continue to hide? Or will you step back into the galaxy?" Alira smiled faintly, though her eyes remained cold. "That depends on the galaxy. If they respect our boundaries, we'll remain peaceful. But if they come for us again—" She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Zinara nodded, knowing she had learned all she could for now. As she prepared to leave, Alira offered one final warning. "Remember this, Commander. Humanity's strength lies not in our weapons, but in our will to survive. Push us too far, and you may awaken something even we can't control. With those chilling words echoing in her mind, Zinara returned to her shuttle and lifted off from Solace Prime. As the planet shrank behind her, she couldn't help but wonder, had she uncovered the truth about humanity, or merely scratched the surface of a much deeper mystery? Back aboard her flagship, Zinara transmitted her findings to the Accord. She included everything: the humans' advanced technology, their psychological tactics, and Alira's cryptic warnings. But as she sent the final message, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had ignored humanity's warnings once. Would they dare to do so again? The transmission from Commander Zinara reached the Accord's central hub within hours. It traveled across light years, carrying with it the weight of her discoveries and warnings. When the message finally played in the Grand Council chamber, the room fell silent. Leaders from dozens of species sat around a massive circular table, their faces illuminated by holographic projections of Solace Prime and its human inhabitants. Some leaned forward, their expressions tense. Others slumped back in their seats, unwilling or unable to believe what they were hearing. Zinara's voice was calm but urgent as she recounted the events on Solace Prime. She described the humans' advanced weaponry, their psychological tactics, and the eerie precision with which they dismantled the Vorthic fleet. But most chilling of all was her account of Dr. Alira's words: "Push us too far, and you may awaken something even we can't control." When the recording ended, no one spoke for several moments. Then, slowly, murmurs began to ripple through the chamber. Some leaders dismissed Zinara's report as exaggerated fear-mongering. Others argued that humanity's actions proved they were a threat that needed to be neutralized immediately. A few, however, remained quiet, their eyes fixed on the holograms of Earth's ruins images included in Zinara's transmission. They understood the implications better than anyone else. Among those who stayed silent was Archivist Kale, an elderly scholar with pale blue skin and luminous yellow eyes. He had spent decades studying Forbidden's histories, piecing together fragments of knowledge about humanity's past. Now, as chaos threatened to erupt among the council members, he rose slowly to his feet. "If I may," Kale said, his voice soft but commanding, "there is more to this story than meets the eye. Humanity's legends are not mere myths. They are warnings etched into the fabric of space-time." The chamber quieted again as all eyes turned to him. Kale activated a console at his seat, pulling up ancient records stored deep within the Accord's archives. Holographic images flickered to life above the table, showing scenes of Earth during its golden age. Towering cities stretched toward the heavens, connected by networks of flying vehicles. Machines worked alongside humans, performing tasks once thought impossible. And yet, beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. Humanity rose faster than any civilization before or since, Kale explained. Their adaptability, creativity, and resilience allowed them to conquer challenges that would have destroyed other species. But these same traits also made them dangerous. Their ambition knew no bounds, and their experiments often spiraled out of control. He paused, letting the gravity of his words sink in. At first, humanity's conflicts were internal wars fought over resources, ideologies, and power. But as their technology advanced, so did the scale of their destruction. Nuclear weapons gave way to bioengineered plagues, which in turn led to artificial intelligences capable of rewriting reality itself. By the time they fled Earth, humanity had become both creator and destroyer, a paradox that terrified even themselves. Kale switched the hologram to show images of Earth after the Great Exodus. The once vibrant planet was now a barren wasteland. Its oceans dried up and its atmosphere choked with toxic clouds. Cities lay in ruins, their skeletal remains jutting out like broken teeth against the horizon. It was a grim reminder of what humanity was capable of when pushed to its limits. But they didn't disappear entirely. Kale continued. Some stayed behind, clinging to the remnants of their world. Others fled into deep space, seeking refuge among the stars. And then there were those who vanished completely, leaving behind only warnings for future civilizations. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Many had heard fragments of these stories before, but seeing them laid out so clearly was unsettling. Kale went on to explain how ancient texts describe humanity's final act of defiance, the creation of self-replicating machines designed to protect them at all costs. These constructs, referred to as leviathans in some records, were said to possess intelligence far beyond anything humanity had ever built. They could adapt, evolve, and learn traits that made them both guardians and potential threats. This is why we caution against provoking humanity, Kale concluded. They are not just survivors. They are architects of their own extinction. And if we push them too far, we risk unleashing something far worse than we can imagine. His words hung heavy in the air, casting a shadow over the council chamber. For a moment, it seemed as though reason might prevail. But then, one leader stood abruptly, slamming his fist on the table. His name was Warlord Grax, a towering reptilian creature with scales that shimmered like molten gold. He represented a coalition of warrior species, many of whom viewed humanity's existence as an insult to their dominance. This is madness, Grax roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. We cannot cower before a handful of primitives hiding on some forgotten rock. If they truly pose a threat, then we must destroy them before they grow stronger. His declaration sparked outrage among the council members. Some agreed with him, shouting demands for retaliation. Others argued that attacking humanity would only confirm their worst fears, triggering the very catastrophe Kale had warned about. The debate grew heated, voices rising until it seemed the chamber might descend into chaos. Commander Zinara watched silently from her position near the entrance. She had attended the meeting via hologram, standing tall despite the turmoil around her. Her presence was a reminder of the stakes involved, but also of the futility of arguing while emotions ran high. Finally, unable to bear the discord any longer, she stepped forward. Enough! Zinara barked, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Every head turned to face her, startled by the authority in her tone. This is not about pride or fear. It's about survival for all of us. Humanity has proven they are not to be underestimated. We've seen what happens when they are provoked. Do you really want to gamble the fate of the galaxy on arrogance? Her words struck a nerve. Several leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding her gaze. Even Grax hesitated, though his expression remained defiant. We cannot ignore the evidence. Zinara continued, her voice softer now but no less firm. If we attack humanity, we risk awakening forces we cannot comprehend. But if we leave them alone, perhaps we can avoid further bloodshed. The choice is ours, but it must be made wisely. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, reluctantly, the council began to discuss options. In the end, they reached a fragile compromise. The Accord would issue a formal declaration condemning the Vortex, actions and reaffirming the law forbidding aggression against humanity. At the same time, they would send reconnaissance teams to monitor Solace Prime, ensuring the humans pose no immediate threat to neighboring systems, that it was a temporary solution at best. Zinara knew it wouldn't hold for long. Already, whispers of dissent spread among the warrior factions, fueled by anger and pride. They saw humanity's victory as a challenge to their supremacy and challenges. In their minds, demanded answers. As the meeting adjourned, Zinara returned to her flagship, her thoughts heavy with unease. She had done everything she could to prevent another conflict, but deep down, She feared it was only a matter of time before someone crossed the line. Humanity had been pushed too far once before, and the result had nearly torn apart the fabric of reality. What horrors awaited the galaxy if history repeated itself? Days turned into weeks, and tensions simmered beneath the surface of galactic politics. News of the Vorthic's defeat spread quickly, carried by traitors, diplomats, and mercenaries alike. To some, the story was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of underestimating humanity. To others, it was an affront to their honor, a stain that demanded vengeance. Among those who took offense were the Xylothians, a hive-minded species known for their ruthlessness and efficiency. Unlike the Vorthics, who acted out of greed, the Xylothians believed in order above all else. To them, humanity's refusal to integrate into galactic society was an act of rebellion, one that could not be tolerated. Their queen, Xylora, convened a secret meeting with her advisors aboard their flagship. The chamber was dimly lit, the walls lined with pulsating bioluminescent panels that cast strange shadows across the room. Xylora herself was an imposing figure, her elongated body covered in iridescent armor that shimmered like oil on water. Her 6 eyes glowed faintly as she addressed her council. "The humans have grown bold," Xylora said, her voice smooth but laced with venom. "They think themselves untouchable, hiding behind their warnings and their weapons. But they underestimate us. We will show them the price of defiance." Our advisors nodded in agreement, their bodies swaying slightly in unison. One of them, a tactician named Vrax, stepped forward. "Our intelligence suggests the humans rely heavily on automated defenses. If we strike quickly and decisively, we can disable their systems before they retaliate." Xylora considered this, her mandibles clicking softly as she thought. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered finally. "But do not engage until I give the command. Let the humans believe they are safe for now." Meanwhile, back on Solus Prime, life continued much as it always had. The humans tended to their crops, repaired damaged structures, and cared for the wounded Vorthic soldiers they had taken captive. Though their victory had been decisive, there was no celebration, only quiet resolve. The galaxy held its breath. Weeks passed and the fragile peace brokered by the Accord seemed to hold for now. But beneath the surface, tension simmered like a dormant volcano on the verge of eruption. News of humanity's victory over the Vorthic spread like wildfire, carried by traitors, spies, and diplomats alike. Some species whispered in awe of the humans' power. Others seethed with anger and humiliation. Among these were the Xylothians, whose hive-minded collective viewed humanity's defiance as an affront to their vision of order. Queen Xylora stood at the center of her flagship's command chamber, her elongated body shimmering under the glow of bioluminescent panels. Around her, her advisors buzzed softly, their movements synchronized as if they shared one mind, which, in a way, they did. The Xylothian queen was not known for patience or mercy. To her, chaos represented weakness, and humanity's refusal to bow to galactic authority was a disease that needed to be eradicated. "We move tonight," Xylora declared, her voice smooth yet cold. "The humans believe they are safe behind their warnings and their weapons. They will learn otherwise." Her fleet massive and sleek, each ship bristling with cannons and energy shields prepared for departure. Unlike the Vorthics, who had acted impulsively out of greed, the Xylothians approached warfare with precision and strategy. Their plan was simple but devastating. Overwhelm Solus Prime with sheer numbers, disable any automated defenses, and crush the human colony before it could retaliate. It was a gamble, but Xylora believed their overwhelming force would leave no room for failure. As the Xylothian armada entered orbit around Solus Prime, Commander Zenara watched from her own ship, stationed at a safe distance. She had been monitoring the situation closely, hoping against hope that the fragile truce would hold. But when sensors detected hundreds of Xylothian vessels descending upon the planet, her heart sank. This was it, the moment she had feared since first encountering humanity. "Commander," Lieutenant Keller said urgently, his voice trembling slightly. "We have to warn them. If we don't, the humans won't stand a chance." Zinara clenched her fists, torn between duty and conscience. Warning the humans meant breaking protocol and risking her position within the Accord. Yet doing nothing felt equally wrong. Finally, she made her decision. "Send a message to Dr. Alira," she ordered. "Tell her what's coming. Use every channel available." Keller nodded and relayed the transmission, though he doubted it would reach the humans in time. Meanwhile, Zinara prepared her crew for the worst. Whatever happened next, it would change everything. On Solace Prime, the humans went about their daily lives, unaware of the storm gathering above them. Dr. Alira sat in her quarters, reviewing data from recent scans of the surrounding space. Something felt off. The readings showed unusual fluctuations in gravitational fields, subtle distortions that didn't match natural phenomena. Her instincts screamed danger, but she couldn't pinpoint the source. Then, the message from Zinara arrived. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the commander's face. Her expression was grim, her words urgent. "Alira, this is not a drill. A Xylothian fleet is approaching your planet. They're preparing to attack. You must act quickly." Alira froze, her blood running cold. The Xylothians were far more organized than the Vorthics, their tactics ruthless and efficient. If they reached the surface, the colony might not survive. Without hesitation, she activated the emergency alert system, sending a signal throughout the settlement. Within minutes, the humans sprang into action. Domes sealed shut, defensive systems powered up, and evacuation protocols initiated for non-essential personnel. But even as preparations began, Alira knew their defenses wouldn't be enough. Not against an army of this size. She turned to a secure terminal hidden deep within the central dome and entered a series of commands. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Lights pulsed across the walls, bathing the room in an eerie glow. Then, a mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Leviathan activation sequence initiated. Alira closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had hoped never to use this weapon, knowing its power could spiral out of control. But desperate times called for desperate measures. As the hum intensified, the ground beneath the settlement trembled. Deep below the planet's surface, ancient machinery stirred to life after centuries of dormancy. Above, the Xylothian fleet began its assault. Wave after wave of ships descended towards Solace Prime, firing barrages of plasma beams and missiles. The humans' automated defenses responded immediately, launching swarms of drones that intercepted incoming projectiles. Energy shields flared brightly, absorbing impacts that would have devastated lesser civilizations. For a moment, it seemed the humans might hold their ground, but the Xylothians were relentless. More ships joined the fray, saturating the atmosphere with fire and destruction. Entire sections of the settlement erupted in flames, and domes collapsed under the strain. The humans fought back valiantly, deploying gravity manipulation devices that crushed enemy vessels and sent them spiraling into oblivion. Still, the sheer number of attackers overwhelmed their efforts. And then, it happened. Beneath the surface, the Leviathan awakened fully. Glowing tendrils of nanobots surged upward, spreading across the landscape like veins pumping life into the earth itself. They latched onto fallen debris, repairing structures in seconds. They infiltrated Xylothian ships, dismantling them piece by piece until nothing remained but dust. But most terrifying of all, the Leviathan extended its influence beyond the physical realm, probing the minds of those who dared invade. Inside the Xylothian flagship, Queen Xylera felt the first signs of intrusion. At first, it was subtle, a faint buzzing in her thoughts, like static crackling through a comm channel. Then came the visions, flashes of Earth's ruined cities, echoes of humanity's darkest moments, and glimpses of horrors yet to come. Her advisors convulsed violently, their synchronized movements devolving into spasms as the Leviathan corrupted their hive-mind connection. "What is this?" Xylera snarled, clutching her head. Her usually calm demeanor shattered as panic set in. "Destroy it. Destroy whatever is doing this." Her orders went unheeded. Crew members staggered blindly through corridors, their bodies twitching uncontrollably. Those who tried to resist found themselves paralyzed, their thoughts consumed by despair. One by one, they fell victim to the Leviathan's psychological onslaught, reduced to shells of their former selves. Outside, the battle raged on, but the tide had shifted decisively. Xylothian ships exploded in rapid succession, their crews incapacitated or driven mad. Survivors fled in disarray, abandoning their comrades and retreating into the void. By the time the last vessel vanished from sight, Solus Prime lay scarred but intact. Smoke billowed from craters where domes once stood, and the air carried the acrid scent of burnt metal. Yet amidst the devastation, there was an undeniable sense of triumph. Dr. Alira emerged from the central dome, her face pale but resolute. Around her, survivors worked tirelessly to repair the damage, their movements fueled by determination rather than fear. She glanced skyward, watching the remnants of the Xylothian fleet disappear into the distance. Victory had come at a cost, but it had come nonetheless. Commander Zanara landed shortly afterward, stepping cautiously onto the charred soil. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, the ruins, the survivors, and the strange pulsating lights emanating from cracks in the ground. It didn't take long for her to realize what had happened. The Leviathan had been unleashed, and its presence lingered in the air like a ghost. "Alira," Zanara said, approaching the older woman. "What have you done?" Alira met her gaze without flinching. "What I had to do. The Xylothians gave us no choice." "But the Leviathan?" Zanara trailed off, unable to finish the thought. She had read the ancient texts, seen the warnings etched into history. The Leviathan was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature, capable of unraveling entire civilizations. And now it had been awakened. "It's contained for now," Alira replied, though her tone suggested uncertainty. "It obeys our commands, but only because it recognizes us as its creators. If it ever breaks free..." She didn't need to say more. Zanara understood the implications all too well. Humanity had survived another invasion, but at what cost? The Leviathan's awakening marked a turning point, not just for Solus Prime, but for the entire galaxy. As they stood together amid the ruins, both women shared a silent understanding. War had come to humanity's doorstep, and while they had emerged victorious, the true battle was only beginning. Somewhere out there, other species plotted revenge, driven by pride and fear. And somewhere deep beneath their feet, the Leviathan waited patiently, ready to unleash its wrath once again. The stars above twinkled innocently, oblivious to the storm brewing below. But for those who knew the truth, they served as a grim reminder. Humanity's survival came at a price, and the galaxy would soon pay the cost. Asterisk. Months passed, but the scars of war lingered across the galaxy. The defeat of the Xylothians sent shockwaves through every corner of known space. Entire civilizations trembled at the thought of humanity's power, while others seethed with anger and humiliation. Stories of the Leviathan spread like wildfire, whispered in tones of awe and terror. Some claimed it was a machine beyond comprehension, capable of tearing apart fleets and minds alike. Others believed it was something more, an ancient force unleashed by humanity's desperation. one that could reshape reality itself. Commander Zanara stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring out at the stars. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion, her tail flicking nervously behind her. She had spent weeks traveling from system to system, delivering warnings to any species considering retaliation against humanity. But her words often fell on deaf ears. Pride and fear drove many leaders to ignore her pleas, convinced that humanity's victory was a fluke or worse, an insult to their dominance. Back on Solace Prime, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such devastation. The humans worked tirelessly to rebuild their settlement, repairing domes, tending fields, and caring for those who had been injured during the battle. Yet beneath the surface of resilience lay a growing unease. Dr. Alira walked among them, her expression calm but distant. She knew better than anyone that the peace they enjoyed was fragile, built on the ashes of conflict, and held together by the Leviathan's silent presence at night. She would retreat to the central dome, where monitors displayed real-time data from the construct buried deep below the planet's surface. The Leviathan remained dormant for now, but its influence lingered. Strange lights pulsed faintly beneath the ground, and occasional tremors shook the landscape. Each ripple served as a reminder of the power humanity had unleashed, and the danger it posed not only to others but also to themselves. One evening, as Alira reviewed the readings, a young engineer named Kale approached her. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he held out a datapad. "Dr. Alira," he began hesitantly, "we've detected anomalies in the Leviathan's activity." Alira took the datapad, her brow furrowing as she scanned the information. The numbers told a troubling story. Fluctuations in energy levels, erratic patterns of nanobot movement, and traces of what appeared to be independent decision-making. It wasn't supposed to do this. The Leviathan was designed to follow commands, to act as a tool rather than an entity. But now, it seemed to be evolving learning. Containment protocols are still active. Alira asked sharply. Kale nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am." "For now. But if these trends continue..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Both of them understood the implications. If the Leviathan broke free of its constraints, there was no telling what it might do. It had already proven capable of devastating entire fleets. Unchecked, it could consume entire planets or worse. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Accord convened another emergency meeting. This time, the atmosphere was different. Gone was the arrogance and defiance that had characterized previous debates. In their place was a palpable sense of dread. Leaders who once dismissed humanity as a minor threat now spoke in hushed tones, their voices tinged with fear. Commander Zanara addressed the council, her tone firm but weary. "We cannot afford another attack on Solace Prime. Humanity has shown they will defend themselves at all costs. And the Leviathan." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It is unlike anything we've ever encountered. Provoking it further risks annihilation, not just for individual species, but for the galaxy as a whole." Her warning carried weight, but it wasn't enough to quell the rising tide of panic. Rumors of the Leviathan's capabilities had spread far and wide, fueling paranoia among weaker species. Entire colonies evacuated planets near Solace Prime, fearing collateral damage from humanity's wrath. Trade routes were disrupted as ships avoided sectors rumored to be under human surveillance. Even alliances within the Accord began to fray. As trust eroded under the shadow of uncertainty, Warlord Grax, the reptilian leader who had once advocated for retaliation, now sat silently, his golden scales dull with worry. He had seen firsthand how quickly pride could lead to ruin. Beside him, Queen Zalora, the sole survivor of the Xylothian fleet, spoke haltingly, her voice trembling with rage and shame. "They have humiliated us," she hissed. "But even I see now that revenge is impossible. To strike again would invite our extinction. The council chamber fell silent as the gravity of her words sank in. For the first time, unity began to take root, not out of cooperation, but out of shared fear. Reluctantly, the leaders agreed to issue a universal decree. Humanity's borders were to remain untouched, and any attempt to violate them would result in severe consequences. It was a desperate measure, born of necessity rather than goodwill. But it was all they had thought as the meeting adjourned. Zinara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy had learned its lesson. But deep down, she knew the truce wouldn't last forever. Somewhere, someone would grow bold or desperate enough to test humanity's limits again. And when that day came, the Leviathan would answer. On Solace Prime, Dr. Alira faced a choice. The Leviathan's evolution was undeniable, its behavior increasingly unpredictable. While it remained loyal to humanity's commands, there were signs it was beginning to think for itself. Glowing tendrils of nanobots extended farther each day, probing the surrounding wilderness as if searching for something or someone. Its hum grew louder, resonating through the ground like a heartbeat. Alera gathered her advisors in the central dome, their faces grim as they reviewed the latest data. "We can't keep it contained indefinitely," she said finally. "Every moment it grows stronger, more autonomous. If we lose control..." No one spoke. They all knew the stakes. Destroying the Leviathan outright wasn't an option. It was too deeply integrated into the planet's infrastructure. Deactivating it might buy them time, but it would leave humanity vulnerable to future attacks. Leaving it as it was, however, risked unleashing a catastrophe on a galactic scale. After hours of debate, Alira made her decision. "We'll send a message," she announced. "To every species, every faction, every outpost. We'll tell them the truth about the Leviathan, not as a threat, but as a warning. Let them know what happens when you push humanity too far." Her advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but ultimately nodded in agreement. Together, they crafted a transmission detailing the Leviathan's origins, its capabilities, and the dangers of provoking humanity further. When the message was ready, Alira activated the broadcast, sending it across the stars in every language imaginable as the signal traveled outward, touching countless worlds and civilizations. Commander Zinara received a copy aboard her ship. She listened intently, her heart heavy with both relief and sorrow. The message was clear and unyielding. Survive. It was neither a plea nor a demand, but a stark reminder of humanity's resolve and the cost of challenging it. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy responded cautiously. Trade resumed, albeit tentatively, and displaced populations began returning to their homes. But the scars of war remained, etched into the collective consciousness of every species. Humanity's name became synonymous with both brilliance and terror, a paradox that inspired both admiration and fear. For Dr. Alira, the burden of leadership weighed heavily. She watched over Solace Prime, ensuring the Leviathan stayed under control while preparing her people for whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew humanity's survival depended not just on strength, but on wisdom and the courage to wield both responsibly. As the stars twinkled above, casting their light across a fractured yet enduring galaxy. One thing was certain: humanity had carved its place among the stars, not through conquest or diplomacy, but through sheer will to endure. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they stood ready to face it together. The galaxy had been warned. Now, it was up to them to decide whether to listen or suffer the consequences. Asterisk.